marketing the Pudgy Penguin because I can market better than anybody else in crypto.
Do NFTs make a comeback?
And crypto needs to be valued on as ecosystem, attention, and revenue. And these, I think, are the three main pillars that we're going to pivot here over the next 10, 15, 20 years and beyond. So now everyone's kind of following and chasing Solana a little bit. But Ethereum's still the big dog. Ethereum's 5 times more valuable than Solana.
Welcome to the Deco podcast, where we bring you stories from founders and investors in Web3. Before we get started, this is not a financial or legal advice. It's just a conversation about things we find interesting in Web3. Views expressed are our own personal opinions. Deco members or guests appearing on the show may have positions on assets they talk about. I sat down with Luca Netz, the CEO of Pudgy Penguins, to talk about how he took on a struggling NFT project and turned it into a 50 million ARR business. And he did that without any new mints. We got into how capital impacts culture, why crypto hasn't cracked mainstream adoption yet, why meme coins might be more important than we think they are, and how Abstract's portal is helping to fix the broken crypto consumer journey. Luca shared his honest takes on speculation, on airdrops, and why founders should treat tokens as products, just like how Apple treats its stock. Before we move on to the episode, I would urge you to subscribe to the show on YouTube, leave likes and comments. And also, if you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, please leave us ratings. When you do that, it will help us produce more shows that are worth your time. On to the episode now. All right. Welcome to another episode. Like today's guest probably doesn't need any introduction, but it's my job to do that. So let me give it a shot. We are here with Luca Netz. He took on Pudgy Penguins. He's the CEO. He's, if you want to call it, he's a co-founder. But there's a lot more to him than Pudgy Penguins. We recently did a story on him. I'll share the link in the show notes. And like someone who used to, pack things up for someone else, he has his own things on a Walmart shelf now. And I think, that's one of the more inspiring personalities in crypto. And someone who has been, fixing things that are broken and trying to make crypto a part of the mainstream culture. Luca, welcome to the show.
I'm super excited and happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with a, very zoomed out. I don't think we need to get into your introduction. Most of the people in crypto who will be watching us already know who you are. So let's better utilize that time and talk about mainstream culture. What do you think, or how do you think crypto affects that? And where does Pudgy fit into that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think when you look at tokenization, right, like what does tokenization truly enable? I think one of the most meaningful things that tokenization enables is the making of intangible things tangible. And right, so like when you tokenize something, you now have the ability to take something that's intangible and making it tangible through the wrapper that is the token. And so when you look at the most valuable things in the world that are intangible, that are set to benefit the most from tokenization and the ability to kind of make those things tangible, I think the answer would be culture and influence. So these are probably the two places that have the biggest TAM in this great unlock that is tokenization. On one side, you have influence, which, moves so much of the markets, whether we know it or not. And you now have the ability to tokenize influence through somebody's likeness, which I think is an interesting one. And probably even bigger than that is culture, right? You see this through meme coins. Like, what are meme coins really, right? Meme coins are the tokenization of a memetic culture that is permeating and transcending throughout the internet. And people want to speculate on the momentum of that trend and that meme. And by getting in early, you have the ability to make a lot of money off of that momentum compounding. And so the future of culture, I think, is tokenized, because whenever you add a financial layer to something, what does that really do? It creates alignment, right? And so culture can compound and snowball so much more effectively when it has a layer of financialization to it. And it also adds a layer of proliferation that I think wasn't already existing. So on one side of the spectrum, you can be super passionate about a meme, you can engage with it, you can communicate with it. And now with tokenization, you have the ability to actually participate in its financial success if it were to have any, and your proliferation, your contributions as a community member actually can benefit you directly. And right, so like memes is an example, but you see this with movements, right? New movements pop up. Elon Musk talks about the American Party, really just an idea, but you can tokenize that idea and speculate on its success. And if and when that party becomes successful, the initial, tokenization of it, the one that the community galvanizes around, will compound and gain momentum. So you're adding financial rails to a thing that's not really financialized today. I mean, there's a lot of businesses today that probably have billions of dollars in impact to culture, but only have, $10 million a year in EBITDA. And so it's a really interesting paradigm shift. I mean, I talk about this with Pudgy and PENGU. PENGU on its face, like Pudgy Penguins, the business has been doubling year over year. This year we'll do $50 million in revenue, fingers crossed. The year after that, we'll do $100 million in revenue. I think it's a path to success, and I think the business will, eventually reach the strides where I think it's worth tens of billions of dollars. But Pudgy Penguins, PENGU impact on culture is exponentially more meaningful than the EBITDA that we generate, right? And so how do you price that? That's where PENGU comes in, right? And people are seeing its impact on culture. It's seeing all the major companies and big players and huge treasury companies wear the Penguin PFP. They're seeing us ring the NASDAQ. They're seeing the GIFs get 1 billion views a day on social. And they're putting a price on that culture at roughly around 2.5, 3 billion bucks. And so it's a huge paradigm shift. And it's a paradigm shift not only for the consumer and the community member, it's a paradigm shift for the creator. Because on the flip side of it, let's say you wanted to build a business that impacted culture. Impacting culture and making money are not synonymous, right? They can be, and sometimes they are. But a lot of the times, people and creators have ideas and IPs that they've been incubating that have no path to break through the monopoly that the incumbents have set in terms of making that IP mainstream, making that character mainstream. That this is kind of the new way to kind of crowdfund and crowdsource, IPs and character in a way that I think has never been done before. I mean, traditionally, you have to go through a big studio. That big studio would gatekeep you. They'd give you, a couple percentage points on the IP and on the royalties, and the creator would end up getting the short end of the stick. And if not, then the major incumbent will just shoo you away and just say, this is not relevant to our plans, and you have no shot at success. And this changes that paradigm, right? Because now IP creators can now incubate and create IP and culture, and they can build a grassroots community. And then that grassroots community can snowball into a movement. And then that movement can now be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. And now all of a sudden, the creator of that IP doesn't need to go and grovel for pennies on the dollar to the major Web 2 and Web 3 incumbents. And so on its face, a lot of people are listening and they think meme coins, pump fun, gambling degeneracy. But it's kind of like that early story with Bitcoin where, on its face, a lot of people were kind of looking at it like, okay, there's one side of the spectrum that has this, really contrarian, take on society, and that this is imperative in terms of, needed as a basic human right. Then the other is like, this is just a gambling and casino and speculation. I really think that meme coins aren't really looked at in the light that I just explained and aren't really like positioned as that potential. I think one of the things that we want to do, and this is probably my last thought before I hand it off back to you, because I can tend to ramble, is I really want to set the playbook for what these things can be, for what culture on chain can be, and what it should be, if I'm being frank, right? It should be more than just an image with a small climax of speculation that is here today and gone tomorrow. They actually are the next generation of, incubating and generating brands and movements and cultures in a way that I think people are really underestimating. So it's a great question, and one that I think has a lot of implications.
Awesome. I can pick up a lot of threads from there, but I want to mention that
shout out to Joel. We were discussing this internally, how capital infusion is extremely important for anything to be a cultural movement, right? And the examples like go way back to 1500s and 1600s, where artists like Michelangelo were sponsored by banks of sorts. Medici were like, they were banks at back in the day. And unless that capital infusion happened, it would probably not have percolated into the wider cultural movement, right? Or cultural diaspora. We think that, crypto along with speculation kind of accelerates all of that, right? Instead of having to wait for decades, you can probably bring about the similar magnitude of change in a span of, few months or few years instead of decades. So yeah, and it completely in line with what you said. So do you think that speculation is essentially or an inherent part of this, and we should be like more welcoming towards it? Because generally crypto gets a lot of flack for, the speculation that is so rampant in our industry.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is speculation runs rampant in crypto, but it also runs rampant in traditional financial market. I think it's all just a byproduct of human emotional spectrum, and it just is a thing. But what makes Tesla have a P to E ratio of 110 versus, BYD has a P to E ratio of 30? I don't even know if these are true. These are just Fugazi numbers, but they both perform the same function. They both have a multiple on revenue, but Tesla would have a higher P to E ratio because people would speculate on the fact of robo-taxis and Optimus and Cybertrucks and Elon and the amazing, warehousing teams that these guys have to stand up just infrastructure within 60 days. And they're speculating on that future value versus BYD, right, is also an electric car company with probably better margins and better and the great revenue, right? But there's no speculation of what it can become outside of powering, electric cars for maybe Asia, right? And maybe, figuring out some supply chain things on that side. And so it's all speculation. Like Palantir, what makes Palantir have a P to E ratio of 200 versus Raytheon, who has a P to E ratio of 40, right? It's Alex Karp and the Silicon Valley guys, pitching, being able to just own AI and defense. And they're telling that story, which makes people speculate that there's an implied greater value than what we are currently seeing because of the story that they're telling versus Raytheon. I don't even know who the CEO of Raytheon is, right? And I don't know what story they're trying to tell outside of, better bombs and better rockets, versus Palantir's telling a whole AI defense story and putting on a masterclass in storytelling. It's all speculation, right? Because it'd be different if there was a fundamental rule that we all followed, which is like tech companies need 20x on their P to E, but every company is different. Every story is different, right? And so there's different implied values in all of those. And I think that's with anything to do with financial markets. Now, the issue with crypto, why crypto gets more slack and why it's more rampant is because there's less meat on the bone, right? It's more hollow when you look under the hood, right? You see a chain's worth 20 billion bucks. Their daily revenue is a couple $1,000s. There's no way you can justify that, right? So like the implied value and the speculation is that that chain will be the next Solana or the next Ethereum. And that is the speculation, right? That is, but it's more hollow versus like, at the end of the day, you look at Alex Karp's business, you look at Palantir, you can point to $1 billion in quarterly revenue, year over year growth, quarter over quarter growth. So it's less egregious. It's less obvious. In crypto, it's really obvious. And that is going to change, though. I think, I was talking with, one of the top crypto billionaires, and I was sitting in a coffee shop in New York with him, and he was just saying, dude, that it's going to have to stop. It's been 10 years of this meaning just these huge implied valuations for nothing under the hood, no ecosystem, no revenue. And I think the two places where I think crypto needs to be valued on is ecosystem, attention, and revenue. And these, I think, are the three main pillars that we're going to pivot here over the next 10, 15, 20 years and beyond. And I think the easy money of, hey, I have this wallet or this thing that I just created or this protocol that I just created that has no momentum, but because I have the right tokenomics, there's an implied value of X. That's like, those will always exist, right? Like why did, the retail will latch onto something and they'll take it to the moon. But I do think we're going to see that paradigm slowly shift away from it. But I don't think it's a crypto problem. I think it's a financial markets problem.
I think you are spot on about, whoever tells the better story gets better valuation, because I think that's what Michael Saylor does. I think he's brilliant at telling the Bitcoin story. And that is why, despite having this huge size, MicroStrategy still gets better premium on their net asset value. So we see these like examples after examples where better stories fetch better valuations for sure. So you mentioned three things: ecosystem, attention, and revenue, right? So can you tell us what is happening in the Pudgy, Penguins world and Pengu world in those three verticals?
Yeah, it's a great one. So from an ecosystem perspective, this has been something within the Pudgy world that has probably been one of its greatest edges, which is, what is an ecosystem for a project like Pudgy? It's its community, right? And what makes a community valuable? Well, I encourage everyone to remember high school and middle school days when there was a cafeteria and there was lunch tables, right? And the lunch tables were segmented by certain cohorts of people. And there was always one lunch table with the coolest people, the best people. And you always wanted to sit at that lunch table, but most people could not. And that lunch table really just consists of, like I said, the people you want to be around. The beauty about the Pudgy Penguin ecosystem really comes down to the people that are a part of it and the community members. And so what I mean by that is Pudgy, I think, has some of the highest concentration of crypto billionaires. I think it has one of the highest concentration of elite crypto founders running elite crypto businesses. One of the highest concentrations of universal community, meaning it's not just a cesspool of cool bros, women, men, Americans, Asians, Indians, Europeans, everyone's a part of the huddle and everyone's welcome in the huddle. And so I think from an ecosystem perspective, a project like Pudgy is built on the people that are a part of it. And I'm honored to say that some of the best people in the world are a part of this community, and they are ready to welcome you with open arms. If you're an active member of the Pudgy Penguin community, there is not a city you can go to in the world where you won't get taken care of. I can tell you this from experience, and I can tell you this through third-party anecdotes that have been told to me of people who really play their role within the community. And the community is a lever that I think a lot of people underutilize. People have gotten jobs out of this community. They've co-founded billion-dollar businesses out of people in this community. They've made lifelong friendships and traveled the world with people in this community. And so the ecosystem is at this point a self-fulfilling prophecy that I really just sit back and watch in awe as, every week and month it kind of grows in its capacity. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
Whether that was always the thought while you were building this, because that wasn't always the case. I just want to understand if there was an active, thought that was put into it, into executing it, and how did you do that?
So there wasn't an active thought in it, if I'm being frank. It was actually one of the reasons why I bought Pudgy Penguins. Remember, I purchased the project, and the cohort of people like GCR still owns the Ghost 1 of 1. Brian Pellegrino, Layer Zero is one of the most important protocols in crypto. Alex from Nansen, just to name a few. These guys were already in. Now, what I will tell you is because those guys were already in, and when I took over, and when I started doing things the right way, and it was really clear that we were doing something different and honest and pure, it started to compound. But that nucleus was there before me. And then I think us just doing things the right way and being high integrity, community members who had took over the project, then started to galvanize and multiply that nucleus. So it wasn't intentional. And it subsequently wasn't even something I really knew we were scaling until 2 years after we had bought the project. And I realized, oh man, the more that I'm traveling, the more that I'm meeting people, the more of these guys are starting to pile in. And then this nucleus of Chads, right, started to grow and multiply. And now at this point, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Like, Van Eck and the Bitwises and these huge institutions and these huge players from the crypto billionaires that you now see are wearing the Pudgy Penguin PFP. They came post being honest and getting it into Walmart and doing something for the space that nobody's ever done, getting into Target, Dave and Buster's, Chuck E. Cheese. They came after that because I think they saw what I think the early adopters saw, which was the potential, but actually seeing now that potential come to fruition and knowing that, like, I think if we mint or do a big mint or try to make a lot of money from some time in between the story, I think you lose those people. I think the way we've gone about building this has earned a lot of respect from those guys and gals who I think are the true needle movers when you really look at the equation and you remove obviously the team and the things that we do from the plate. Like ultimately, Pudgy's going to stand the test of time, I think, for hundreds of years. And over that time, it's going to be, its ability to sustain is going to be because of those guys, right? And ultimately, it starts and stops and starts and ends with the community in a really interesting fashion. So it was not intentional. So that would be my first prong on ecosystem. And then, company ecosystem. One thing is important when you look at the Igloo and the stack that we're building with the chain, it's all an ecosystem. They all work with one another. So the business has its own ecosystem with the blockchain, with Pudgy, with the products that Pudgy builds, both in Web 2 and Web 3. They all cross-pollinate and benefit one another. That would be it on the ecosystem side. The second side is the attention side. I will value this above all else always. I'm biased here though. I'm a marketer. I love marketing. And I've said this for 8 years, 10 years since my professional career started, which was you can build great stuff, but if no one's buying it, if no one sees it, it doesn't matter. And so I've always been an attention maxi. I think the character allows me to do what I think this team does better than anybody else in crypto, which is market. The character is beautiful because it's cute. It's universal. It's agnostic. Everybody loves it, right? 5-year-olds, 60-year-olds, men, women, every part of the world, every psychographic, every demographic. Pudgy PENGU is really hard to hate. And if you hate it, you're probably that 1, 2, 3 percentile of people that is just angry and just going through something in life, right? But most people love it. It's a beacon of hope. It's a beacon of happiness. It's crypto's underdog. It's one of the great underdogs in today's society. And everything about the penguin allows me to proliferate it in a way that I am really honored to proliferate it in, but one that I think is super transcendent in its ability to meet and reach people. And so Instagram, YouTube, toys, and physical products, people think I look at these as marketing tools more than I do anything else, right? When you close the screen and you turn off the phone, hopefully a friend or a family member or in your room or in your office or your son or your daughters with a Pudgy Penguin product. And that's an interesting emotional resonance that I think is going to be super meaningful because when you look at mimetic characters in crypto, there's nothing like it, right? From a physical world. Games, movies, TV shows, if you go out to your local arcade or your favorite retailer to get some products that you need for the house, the penguin is everywhere. It's a marketing masterclass. It will continue to be. It's one that I think when it's all said and done, everybody will look back and be like, damn, that was obvious, because you cannot have that many impressions and touch points and not succeed. I'm just very unequivocally convinced in that thought and that frame of mind. And then the revenue side, right? Attention translates to revenue. And so, like I said, I think Pudgy Penguins will do $50 million in revenue this year. No mints, no extractive schemes, from us to the community. That's $50 million that we made and we earned the right way. We earned off the backs of, proliferating the penguin and marketing it. And then again, that's kind of like a flywheel that helps itself. The more marketing, the more product sales, and the more that compounds and wins. And so that's probably an in-depth analysis into the 3 pillars that you had asked.
Brilliant. Can you break down the revenue for us? All the revenue lines, where it comes from?
Yeah, it's 80% licensing. So licensing is through toys, collectibles, bed sheets, lunch boxes. Licensing is a huge revenue line for us. Events, gaming. Well, events is a separate line item, but within licensing, gaming, we have 2 licensing models. And a lot of people are perplexed by that number. The way you get to that number is really through the Web3 licensing model. So Pudgy Penguins today is taking percentages of revenue or equity in businesses in Web3 that can't find PMF and basically skinning it Pudgy and marketing it to the world. Pengu Clash is a perfect example of this. So Pengu Clash is a game on Telegram and on Abstract. Pengu Clash will probably do $500,000-$600,000 in revenue this month, right? That's one vertical. There's 5 of those that exist within the Pudgy Penguin ecosystem. And then you have all the Web 2 stuff. We get paid for content, right? So we have 10 million followers just under across all social channels. We get paid for all of that content, the views. And then we do clothes, in-house products that we sell that, so when you add it all up, and I'm expecting a pretty big Q4. So if you add that all up, that's how you get our revenue lines.
So how does the licensing work? Like someone manufactures something and they come to you and they say that we want to use the Pudgy and they pay you for those particular rights, or are there royalties? How does it work?
Yeah, it's a couple fold. So I think Pudgy Penguins right now has like 45 or 50 active licenses. And basically the deal is, I put my penguin on your lunchbox and you give me 10% of every lunchbox that sells. And the reason why you're doing that is because you assume you will sell 10% more lunchboxes with my cute penguin on it. And the deals are really twofold. Most deals have a minimum guarantee. So the second I sign the contract, I know exactly at a minimum what I'm going to make. There's a promise to make at least X amount of dollars. And then there's a royalty that goes on top of that, right? So if I beat that minimum guarantee, then every quarter I collect checks. So every quarter we have a 3-person team who literally makes calls and says, pay us, you owe us money, right? Arcade machines. I know there's actually one in Mumbai. I don't know if you saw. Yeah, the Dave & Buster's in Mumbai. So I know you're in Mumbai. Go to the Dave & Buster's in Mumbai. There's a Pudgy Penguins arcade machine there for all of my Indian huddle members who are based in Mumbai. And, for example, he sells those machines to Dave & Buster's for $5,000. I make a royalty of 15%, call it. And every time he sells one of those things, I make $750 to $1,000. And then it compounds, right? Then there's not just those, there's the claw machines. And then that's a 7-figure a year, mid 7-figure a year line item just in the arcade machines. And that's not even something that we champion that much. So again, you compound all of those licenses. The goal is I want 300 licenses in the next 18 months. That's been the challenge. So, if I get 18 licenses or 300 licenses, that's a $100 million a year business easily just on the licenses that we issue.
So you said 80% is licensing. What about the rest 20?
So 20 would be events, in-house products. We actually make a lot of money on events. So the beauty about Pudgy Penguins is that every crypto event, there isn't a crypto event in the world where Pudgy Penguins doesn't have a presence. We make money on those events, people, believe it or not. We make money through a slew of different ways, but we make money on those. That's a pretty big line item. We make products internally. So t-shirts. This is a Vandy collab, Pudgy Penguins x Vandy. His last 3 collabs, I think, were Nike, Pokemon, and Pudgy Penguins. So we'll make money direct to consumer. We'll make a couple $1 million. So kind of add it all. And then there's like little things in between, side missions that always accrue at least a couple times a year that seem to make us a decent amount of money.
All right. That's refreshing. Most of the NFT collections before Pudgy or even after it, the usual method of revenue is launching another collection and, increasingly they make lesser and lesser revenue, obviously, for obvious reasons, because people catch on to the grift and they realize that there's nothing here and they move on to the next shiny thing that they see. Luca, I want to take you back to your decision of buying the Pudgy IP, right? And you bought it for $2.5 million. And, now you have all these different revenue lines that you just mentioned and, expanded on. And there's another rate of $50 million, which is brilliant. Forget just the NFT project, right? For any crypto project, I think it's a brilliant run rate to have. Did you know all of this when you were putting that amount into buying the collection?
I didn't. I mean, I didn't even know what I was doing bidding on it. I didn't know what I was getting into. It was a gut. It was really like, I won't give you the story because I think it's a better post-mortem and it's going to probably take me an hour to give everyone like every detail of it. But it's a divine intervention as to like how I bought this, why I bought this. Something unconscious took over me and I had no idea that this was going to happen. I had no idea. But when we made the purchase, we gave it our all, right? And that's what I think matters. Obviously, if we bought it and then I saw Bored Apes valuation, I saw what the apes were doing, I knew it was possible. But I can tell you, we definitely threaded the needle here in terms of one of the best outcomes. And now I actually think we're in a boat where the outcome can be generational and one of the most legendary things to ever happen in the space, if not the most legendary thing, is now we've kind of crossed that hump of like, is this going to work? It's working. It's worked. And now it can work in the most incredible fashion, right? Now you can there's hope here to build a $50 billion enterprise. Right? When we first bought it, you'd probably put the chances of that at like 1 to 5%. percentage chances of that happening here, if I were to be pragmatic, are like 35, 40%. You know, we still have to play our cards right and we still have to hit the nail on the head, but there's a real chance here that we could do one of the greatest things that crypto's ever seen. And I'm excited to give it a shot. I think if anyone's going to do it, it's us. And if we made it this far off of a 1 to 3, 4% chance of getting this far, I'm very confident in our ability to get it this far with the 35, 40% odds to that big. I think there's probably a 90% odds that we take it to 10 billion easy. You know, ecosystem value, enterprise value. I think we're for sure get it to 50 billion. You have to have it's a Pokemon kind of on your hands, you know? So, you know, have to give the percentage chance, but I think there's no chance in hell that we don't take this 4 or 5 times further than we've already taken it. I'm very confident in that.
Love it. Love the candidness. I mean, someone could have easily said, oh no, this is what I thought would happen and all of that, but love that you're candid about it. Brilliant. In general, consumer crypto, right? Obviously, there has been a lot of talk about consumer crypto and, you know, how it will percolate into Web 2 and, you know, people will move to crypto because it's just better experience and, you know, you control your data and all of those things. We have seen it. A lot of people theorize about it. A lot of people write things about it, including us, but we haven't seen a grand example of it working at a decent scale. Where do you think we are stuck? How do you think you will change it?
Yeah, I think we're stuck in a place that I can't change, but the place I can, but we're also stuck in another place that I can change. The place that we're stuck that I can change is the consumer journey in crypto is broken, right? And so I've derived it as to why, and I think it's because of the decentralization psyop. And I don't think it's a psyop and a bad thing. I think, let me give you a research-oriented lens as to how we got here. Crypto is a game of follow the leader. And unfortunately, for most venture investors and consumer speculators are looking for the beta to the alpha to hopefully that beta flipping the alpha. And so the great alpha in the blockchain space is Ethereum. Yet Ethereum, I think, performs a different function than what I think most blockchains should be performing. And it is really important to delineate, I think, the two different types of blockchains in my mind. The first type of blockchain, which would be Ethereum, is performing a function of a decentralized network state, right? Which is incredibly important for humanity and incredibly important for censorship resistance and incredibly important for the future of our financial system, right? Its priorities, while being a decentralized network state, above all else is decentralization, right? Immutability. And then I think on the other side of the spectrum, right, there's blockchains who function as performant payment rails, right? Borderless liquidity and borderless composability on top of Stripe-esque payment rails, right? Blockchains are built to beat Stripe. They're built to beat PayPal, right? But decentralized network state and performant payment rails, I don't think are synonymous. So while everyone was going and chasing after, and maybe they might, and maybe Ethereum does pull that off, and it easily could, right? But I think today, right, like the throughput of Ethereum needs to be, this is Solana's case, right? Solana is so there are two different functions. Could Ethereum be that as well? Totally, right? If they build it that way. As currently constructed, is not built that way, right? So you have Solana on one side, which is like super performant payment rails built to just disrupt Stripe and PayPal and the NASDAQ. And, you know, just really, and the TAM there is even bigger than Stripe and PayPal. It's because of the global composability aspect. It's also like a tech stack, a software stack. And on the other side, you have Ethereum. The issue is before Solana's like a net new thing of the last, 2, 3, 4 years, right? So now everyone's kind of following and chasing Solana a little bit. But Ethereum's still the big dog. Ethereum's 5 times more valuable than Solana on a token perspective. So everyone's chasing Ethereum. And when you chase Ethereum and you want to be the next Ethereum or the Ethereum killer, you embody and you tell a similar story. You embody its ethos, right? Because you want to be the beta to the alpha. And eventually the beta flips the alpha in hopes that as speculators will speculate. But the issue in Ethereum's model that everyone is now chasing and following is this idea of decentralization and not the performant payment rail side. And so the issue that I'm getting at is ultimately decentralization and consumer adoption are not synonymous. They're antonyms. They're actually paradoxical. They mean opposite things. And so let's apply this thought process to something that is decentralized in the real world. Let's use social medias, for example. The only really big decentralized social media in the world is a company called 4chan. 4chan has a couple million users, kind of helpful if you go down the right lens, right rabbit holes, kind of harmful if you go down the right rabbit holes. And then you look at a centralized social network. You have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have X, you have all of these things. What is the difference between 4chan and Instagram? What makes the centralization better? It's the consumer journey. It's the interface. It's the platform. Feels better. It's curated, right? It's easy. One step, I know exactly where to go and how to go. All of my questions are answered. So easy, a monkey can navigate through it. Versus 4chan, you kind of have to be an high IQ individual to navigate 4chan, frankly, right? And at least not end up in places that are harmful and traumatizing. And blockchains have gone through the same thing. So blockchains are actually the custodians, I think, of consumer adoption. They have that responsibility. They're payment rails, but what they haven't built is they haven't built consumer-facing platforms. Why? Because consumer-facing platforms are centralized. So if you're copying the incumbent, which is Ethereum, the great decentralized network state, right? The build is going to be in that spirit. It's going to be general purpose. You're going to be telling a story of, replacing the internet's economy, right? But you're not going to be telling a story of consumer adoption, right? And the Ethereum playbook is broken in terms of its consumer journey. The complete consumer journey is fragmented. Go to MetaMask for this. Go to Uniswap for this. Go to Aave for this. Go to all these different websites, connect your wallet to all these different places, and then maneuver the web. That is a really amazing, well-spirited vision. But to understand consumers is to also to understand consumer behavior and to live in the reality of their current IQ and EQ and their technological advanced prowess and how they navigate, which is not that high, right? And so I remember this even myself because I'm not that technically savvy. I remember using Uniswap and MetaMask for the first time. And I remember for a day there, 2 days, it was really perplexing. Now, as a curious entrepreneur, I can go through the learning curve of perplexity, right? That's fine with me. But as an everyday barista and waiter and cashier, I see perplexity and I fold. I am intimidated and I divert. And so I actually think the great innovation, and this is where Abstract under the hood runs the same chain that anybody else will run. There's nothing innovative on the chain level, right? The chain doesn't functionally do anything that's that much better outside of it being on the ZK stack, which I think everywhere is going. And I just believe in, the idea of just ZK powering a majority of where this stuff is. And that is the foresight we went there. So we just decided that the ZK stack was just the better stack. And that's our innovation on our back end. Our front end is actually on the consumer interface, right? And it solves really two things. The first one is the consumer journey, which is you asked what is broken and why haven't we broken through? Because the steps are too much. There's too many steps. I'm a D2C guy, right? So our whole thing when running Shopify and direct to consumer is conversion. You bring 1 million people to the site. How do you get the conversion from 1% to 2%? If you do that, right, it's CRO, it's called CRO. Like you CRO optimize, all of a sudden you make double amount of money on the same paid traffic, right? You've now just increased your top line 2% by 2 times, right? The question with crypto now is you see the metrics, people are interested. How do you increase the conversion, right? It's a conversion game, which is going to be solved by a centralized consumer terminal and interface and how everyone interfaces. I know I'm right now today because unbeknownst to me, the first mover here was WorldCoin and World App. The second mover was Abstract and Abstract Portal. And the third mover is Base in TBA app. These, to me, these are some of the best teams in crypto. We thought we were first movers. We were not. And Base's TBA app was super validating because it's obvious. It's obvious, right? Like when I speak to it, hopefully the people listening are like, yeah, it's obvious. You just need one domain, one app, one place where you can do everything on chain. You don't need to go anywhere else. Just one place acts as your source of truth that curates and optimizes for your wants and needs. And you can basically build on top of that. The interface actually also solves another core problem, which is the terrible business model that is blockchains. Blockchains are terrible businesses, horrible businesses, right? All the values leak to third parties, right? That's why chain tokens are down only, right? Because they have to sell the tokens to sustain the expensive maintenance that is running the blockchain, right? And just integration costs alone are $10 million a year. Eng costs are probably 10, 15, $20 million a year. It's a terrible business. Sequencer fees don't recoup that cost. And so owning the interface actually gives you a lot of opportunity to not leak the value of some of the most important parts, which actually is just great for the enterprise, because then it solves some of the bigger problems with crypto that we talked about, which is like these things need to be deeper enterprises, right, to accrue that enterprise value and to justify some of their valuations, which fix is a lot of the problems that it has in TradFi and then a lot of the problems it has in the consumer side. So basically what I'm saying is the one thing we can fix is the consumer journey. The consumer journey is fixed by one centralized interface where you can do everything on chain. Call it a crypto consumer super app, consumer terminal, whatever you want to call it. That is one of the biggest things why we haven't seen consumer adoption or consumer crypto take off the way that you and I would hope, is because you are assuming that everybody is on the upper percentile of technological advancement. The data tells you that a majority, if not 98 to 97% of the entire planet is on the lower percentile, right? People are barely getting connected to the internet, right? Which is also an opportunity. And all they need is a clean, cohesive, simple journey, right? I'm not saying to reinvent the mechanics. The mechanics work and they're important, right? They're important in terms of what they are going to do for humanity. It's the journey that's broken. And that's what I think we can fix.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is you want to build and curate and retain the relationship with the user or the consumer, and everything else can be abstracted away from them. They don't need to know how any of this works, which is perfect because we use this example very often, but every internet user doesn't understand how TCP IP works, right? So the follow-up here is, has the underlying infrastructure, because in the last few years, we have VCs or anybody or other investors, right? They have poured a lot of dollars into developing this infrastructure to a level where someone like you can come in and build that consumer interface so that everything else can be taken care of at the back end. So has that happened yet?
The infrastructure is there. As of 6 months ago, it's finally gotten there. I mean, you can really build this thing now like a Web2 company. I think any advanced, sophisticated builder, maybe there's a couple bells and whistles, a couple features that are not there yet, right? But you are 85% of the way there. This thing is ready finally for mass. And you're seeing that. You're seeing that in the builds. World Chain, World App wasn't possible. TBA app, Portal, none of this was possible 3 years ago, right? You have all the right pieces with the exception of a couple features that I would probably reference as amenities and not necessities. All the necessities are there for you to build. Now it's just about deprogramming the conditioning, because the builders and the ethos has been conditioned to build an X spirit, not in the spirit of mass market, mass consumer adoption and integrity, right? The space has rewarded niche builds to power users, right? And has rewarded them in the form of hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, and made a lot of people rich building in that spirit. And so again, entrepreneurs, most of them, if not all of them, just want to get rich, right? And so when you've programmed and conditioned builders to get rich by doing things that are frankly the wrong way, right? It's going to take a couple of us, right? That's why I think the success of Pudgy, success of some of these guys are important, because it's like people have to see that doing it the right way, which takes a little more time, a little more effort, a little more sacrifice, a little more patience, has exponentially more upside than doing it the conditioned way, which can get you very rich very quick.
Right. And how does abstract fit into this role of maintaining and nurturing consumer relationships?
It's in the Portal product. So the big product at Abstract is portal.abs.xyz. It's going to be rebranded into its own standalone brand. Think of Abstract, the blockchain, as our Anthropic, and Portal as our Claude, right? It is a perfect. And so Portal product is, you go to portal.abs.xyz, email, you're in. It is the best 0 to 1 in crypto, and it's the best, I think, 1 to 100 from a consumer journey perspective in crypto. You can task a waiter or a barista or a friend or a family member with performing a function on the abstract chain by going through that website, and they can do it very quickly, a lot more quickly than they can do it on any other experience, right? And so it's this idea that you can just go to one central place and navigate an ecosystem and do everything that you want to do on an ecosystem without having to go and figure out what to do next. It's this consolidation of information and experience on one central interface. Performs the same function as World App, right? What is World App's function? Is to basically live in the world ecosystem through one singular destination. What is the TBA app? The TBA app's function is to live through the base ecosystem through one functional experience, right? It's a very seamless experience for the end consumer so that, people can actually onboard and not get frustrated or intimidated and then have to leave quickly after onboarding because you somehow lost them, halfway through the conversion process.
Brilliant. So what are the building blocks of this particular app, right? What are we assuming that, okay, this is what the user is here for? Do you have numbers, or do you have like surveys that tell you that, okay, these are the things that users want to do and they are not able to do that elsewhere?
Yeah. So what we found, the data has shown us that the portal product for us is placed with the most PMF is as a Steam competitor. So really as a discovery hub of curation. So, which is actually good because basically what that means is it basically means abstract portal's best function is giving PMF to builders deploying on the chain, which as a chain, apps make chains don't make apps. If I can make the case that I have the best distribution for deployers, then they all should be deploying here, which means our chain will succeed. And we found this because we basically have this recipe on the portal that if we spotlight and badge your app and your app is good and sticky and fun, every single time I'll take you from zero to at least $300,000-$400,000 a month in revenue. And I have like 20 case studies for this, which basically means if you're building an app, why would you deploy it anywhere else other than abstract? Because there's a 95% probability that I can take you from $0 to $300,000 in a month, which is all an app builder needs who's serious and actually has a chance of success needs to succeed, right? It's a pretty crazy function. But I think Portal right now, like, what are the places that are built into it? It's discovery, which is that Steam style product. It's trading. It will be launching. It will be profile and custody. So it's a wallet. The whole portal is a big, giant smart wallet, right? It is rewards and it is trading, right? So I think, and then, but again, the discovery is where the meat on the bone lives, right? Because then there's so many different prongs, right? Is it gaming? Is it gambling? Is it social-fi? Is it trading? Our theme, we're very thematic here though. Like our theme is fun. Like I want this place to be a discovery and a hub of fun. And if you can go to this website every single day and you have an opportunity to make money and have fun while doing it, then ultimately I will win. It's not if, it's when.
So do you think that this is kind of at odds with the users that are already there on chains who are willing to spend a lot? Because most of the users are here for financial applications, right? Hyperliquid is a great example of that. And what you're saying is you want abstract to be fun first, which does it also mean, I mean, the other side of that is it also that you don't want it to be DeFi heavy or, people are not doing financial stuff. So how do you reconcile those things?
And we got a lot of shit for this when we first launched. There was a big FUD storm around it because we really looked and we built the product for the open ocean, not for the existing users. I think we've threaded the needle and we've kind of adjusted and understood that there's some necessities that existing users need, but we've kept 75% of the build towards this open ocean because that's where the TAM is, right? I don't want to pander to the existing user base. That's not how you break through consumer crypto. And could I pander to the existing user base and tell an amazing story? Hell yeah, we could. And hell yeah, I can. And could I win very easily, quickly doing that? Hell yeah, we could. Hell yeah, I can. But I've been conditioned at Pudgy to look where others are not looking. And that has yielded the most success for us. And 3-4 years, not a long time for me. I can be patient, right? And if that's what it takes to really break through and capture and own that open ocean, then so be it. But I'm going where nobody else is going because that's where all the value is going to accrue. And I'm going to listen and meet the existing users where they are, but I'm going to try to convince them to come to where I'm coming. And if they want to come with me, they can. And if they don't, they don't. There's plenty of chains for them to play with. But I know this open ocean's where this stuff is going to win.
What are the user personas that you are going after? Can you like share 2 or 3 ideal type of users with us?
Gen Z, Gen Alpha, 18 to 30. Men is probably where we're going to win in the beginning. Super male oriented that are focused and conscious of the probably on the upper percentile or, on the 50+% of like consciousness of finances, somebody that's into sports, into having fun, into gaming, into stocks and trading. A Gen Z, Gen Alpha male pursuing the American dream, right? Pursuing financial freedom and fun, right? Because sports betting is fun, right? Gambling is fun, trading is fun, stocks and options are fun, games are fun. And I think that's kind of the user segment today.
Brilliant. I want to switch up a little bit here, go back to the NFT collection. Do you think all of this would still have transpired had there not been the NFT element to it?
No, because they were aligned. Everyone was financially aligned when I took it over. Financial alignment, whether it's non-fungible or fungible tokens, financial alignment's really important, right? Financial alignment's super important. I think none of this happens if the NFTs don't exist, and the NFTs are the first editions. And I think as we continue to succeed, they will continue to appreciate and succeed with it.
So financial alignment brings me to the token, right? I think you guys did one of the probably the widest airdrop. I'm not sure if it is the widest, but one of the widest airdrop in crypto. I'm pretty sure that you still got a lot of slack for, not doing a few things right and whatnot. I don't think any airdrop is going to be correct because there's going to be a certain section of people who will be unhappy because they got $2,000 instead of $20,000. And if you get 20, you want 200 and so on, right? That never ends. And you will always have these few characters who will, instead of saying that, oh, cool, I mean, this is what I got. Instead of saying that, they will probably, give you shit for not getting more. So what were the learnings from this airdrop? Is there anything that you would change? I'm not sure if Abstract is going to have a token, but if it does have, what would you do differently? Because not everyone gets a second chance. You probably will.
Yeah, I think the one thing that I would change that we will do differently for Abstract is you better be aligned sooner rather than later, right? Like I felt really dirty when guys were just buying a day before, making a ton of money, dumping everything. I felt really cheated. I felt like people were like, I had a girlfriend and she was cheating on me right in front of my face. And I didn't respect that. I don't respect that. People call founders grifters. I call people like that grifters. If you call a founder trying to go make some money for him and his business a grifter, then I'm going to call you who's going and trading a fucking thing and dumping right like on my fucking head with no loyalty. I'm going to call you a grifter too. I mean, it's impossible to refute, right? Like if one side of the spectrum is a grifter for looking after themselves and pumping and dumping on you, then the other side is as well. Right. And so I'm just anti-grifter. I haven't been a grifter for the last 4 years and I'm not going to let grifters just grift. You're going to, so don't be surprised if you're listening to this. If you believe in this, if you believe in Abstract, if you want all the rewards that come with this ecosystem, you better be in it now. Don't be in it a day before. It's not going to work out well for you. And I'm not going to talk about it either. Like I'm just going to let these interviews be proof. So when everyone's crying about it, the day of, and they're mad that I didn't tell them 3 weeks prior, it's not going to matter to me. I'm not going to care because they're grifting, right? They're just grifting for themselves. They don't care about being a part of the community. They don't care about the success. They're grifting their own thing. So I want them to get smoked. I will want that, right? Because just like they want grifters to get smoked that are founders, right? So I'm just letting it be known. You want to be a part of this, you be a part of this now. Show that you're a real community member, that you're a real holder. I only have the interest now in rewarding real holders, real believers. I have no interest in giving opportunist grifters a quick win.
I respect that. And I hope that, at some time there is a change in wider crypto community, but I can't affect that. I can only hope that it happens sometime. Talking of token, like, do you think that token is a product or is one of the products?
I think it totally is. You want to know an interesting thing?
Yeah, sure.
When we were down 90%, I met with my head of strategy, Vedant, and we sat down and I was literally like, the token is a product. And that was the bottom. And we just treated it a little differently.
Oh, why do you say that? Can you elaborate? Because we have this debate internally, whether it's a product, is one of the products and all of those things. I just want to know what you think.
we won't even use tokens as an example. Look at Apple. Apple treats their stock like a product. If you actually look at the All In podcast, the second recent one that was posted 9 days ago, go to the Apple section and you'll see that there's a whole, you can filter it by the 2-hour podcast. You can see it. Apple hasn't innovated in 10 years, but its stock has been up because he's treating the stock with the buybacks and everything. They're treating it like a product, right? It's fascinating to watch. It is a complete masterclass on what it actually means to treat the stock like a product. And what I've learned is the best CEOs of the best stocks treat the stock like a product. And I won't deep dive any more than that. I'll leave it up for the viewers to do their own investigations. But look at that Apple section on that All In podcast. I don't know today is the 19th, so it would have been posted on the 10th, 12th, but of August. It will show you what it means to treat a stock or a token like a product. Because Apple, when I saw that, it hit me like a tidal wave. I said, Tim Cook is just the master at treating the stock like a product.
How do you apply that? I mean, when you were discussing when the token was down, how did that change your approach?
You got to watch the Apple section and you'll see. And you'll see the charts. I don't want to talk too much about it in terms of mind frame, but that section will show you. You'll see the charts and how he does it and, the buybacks and things like that. It's super fascinating.
Thank you. I'll definitely check it out. Speaking of buybacks, right? This is a theme in crypto now. Everyone wants every bloody project to do buybacks and whatnot. I don't subscribe to it. I think it depends on which stage of the growth curve you are, because not every stock does buyback. So, it's not necessary that revenue that the project is generating has to be distributed to its token holders, and it comes at the cost of growth. Like growth and buybacks probably at times are at odds with each other. What are your thoughts on, today the run rate is 50 million. When it grows to, let's say, 100, 200 million, are there plans of buyback? How will you distribute that revenue? Are there even going to be distributions?
I kind of look at buybacks, like, again, just look at Zuck said this, and it kind of made me, I do believe in having a deflationary token year over year. I think it tells a great story, especially when our whole thing is we want to beat the Doge, and the Doge is inflating $5 million a day, right? And so I do want to be deflationary year over year, one. So I do want to tell that story, and I think that's going to be an important story to tell. Next is, I also believe, based on what Zuck said, is you do stock buybacks when you can't do anything else, right? You should do token buybacks when you've exhausted every other option. When you have nothing else to do, right? You do a token buyback. The problem is these crypto guys have a big protocol, they make some money. First thing they do is token buyback, right? And they're doing it wrong. They should be placing bids instead. They're TWAPing it up. Super silly, right? Dudes are not even buying back the token correctly. If you buy it back, place a bid at a level that matters. Don't just bid it up. You're just going to pay a retarded premium for no reason. If you're buying back tokens, you're in the business of accruing as much token as possible. So if and when I buy back tokens, I will be placing bids on levels that I think make sense. I'm not going to be bidding it up. It's so silly. It's like the dumbest thing ever, for somebody to do that, just burning money. Because I'm in the business of accruing as much token as possible, because I don't have a 6-month time horizon. I have a 10-year time horizon, right? So I want as many tokens as possible. Tim Cook is not bidding it up. He's placing a level in which the dark pools are selling into, So I think, like, for me, I have a lot of things up my sleeve before I need to make my entire business about buying back the token. Again, every year I'll make it deflationary, but I'm not out of tricks up my sleeve. I have many tricks up my sleeve. I have 10 tricks up my sleeve. So I need to focus on executing on those 10 tricks versus, buying and burning, which is like so menial. And like, I can tell you as somebody, who's bought, $15 million into the, companies bought, like, there's a reason, like, Maker's buying millions of dollars a day. Like, the chart doesn't do anything. People over index the buys and burns big time in terms of what they do for their bags over the course of a short to medium term. I mean, they are totally overinflating what the meaning of those things do, truthfully, like way over indexing it. But I do believe in a deflationary year over year story. I think that's a great story to tell. And I believe, doing it when you've exhausted all other options. My options have not been exhausted. I will tell you, there was a moment when we were down only that I was ready to pull all of the levers to get it done. But I think now that I'm on the other side of it, I realize that getting on the other side of it we spent money on marketing and proliferating, and that's going to yield us the most results right now. Is you just want me to spend as much money as marketing. If you're a PENGU holder, you want me to do one thing, is spend as much money as I physically can marketing the Pudgy Penguin, because I can market better than anybody else in crypto, arguably better than almost anybody else in the world. And you want that superpower performing the most important function out of any crypto token, which is market, attention.
Brilliant. Do NFTs make a comeback?
Yeah, they do.
Nice. What do you think changes that? And what do you think changes the current lull?
I think people just need to get rich and it'll come back, but I think it'll come back via the form of power law. I don't think it'll come back the same way. The top will really win, and then you won't see like bullshit fucking cartoon drawings selling for $500 and reselling for $10,000 an hour later.
All right. Brilliant. Thanks a lot for spending this time. But before we hop off, what do you want to, leave the listeners and viewers with?
I welcome everyone listening into the huddle. If you're not in the huddle already, we've got NFTs, we've got PENGU, and come give portal.abs.xyz a try. I think you guys will really enjoy it. And thank you for the interview. I really enjoyed this.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for being here. Thanks a lot for spending the time. Brilliant.
Bye, guys.